Welcome to Django Views. After watching this video, you will be able to understand and create a Django view. A view takes a web request, such as HTTP GET, POST, DELETE, or UPDATE, and returns a web response. The web response can be a string, a JSON/XML file, an HTML page, or an error status indicating errors on the client or server side. Let us see how to build a function-based view. Like other Django functions, view accepts arguments as input and returns something. It normally needs an HTTP request object as the first argument. This object contains read-only metadata such as method, header, parameters, or payload. The request method is an HTTP GET method or HTTP POST method, and the view normally needs to process using logic. For example, here we query the first course record from the database and insert its name into an HTML template. After processing the HTTP request with business logic, an HTTP response object will be populated and returned to the UI. You can typically pass contents such as an HTML page, a string, or a byte string to the HTTP response constructor to create and return an HTTP response. After creating the view, you map a URL pattern to it so that the URL in the HTTP request will be mapped to your view function. To do this, open the URL conf file, normally called urls.py, in your app's root folder. Then add a path object with the first argument route, which specifies a URL pattern. Django will compare the requested URL against each pattern in the URL patterns list. The second argument is the view function we defined in the previous slide. The name argument lets you refer to the view from other places in Django, so you can change the URL as often as needed and use the reference name to refer to the URL pattern. Sometimes you also need to specify an app underscore name as the prefix or namespace. Here, we called our app Online Course, and the name of the view is Course. So we can refer to this URL pattern using online course from anywhere in our Django project. Each HTTP response is associated with a status code. In our previous result, a default 200 code included in the HTTP response indicates the request was processed successfully. However, the response of a view can also be an error. For example, when the view cannot find the course in the database, it should return a not found error to the user. The HTTP error response can be returned by adding an error status, such as 404 not found, to the status argument of the HTTP response constructor, along with the content, such as an error message or an error HTML page. If the course can be found, a 200 OK status code can be used with a successful message or HTML page. In this video, you learned what Django views are and how to create a Django view to receive an HTTP request and send an HTTP response.